We're here. We're back. It's a Wednesday. It's a little early, but we needed to do this a little early because someone's going to London and to not Norway, and to Dublin, which is awesome, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. We're here for Think and Link, where we gather and have a wonderful conversation amongst two people, facilitated by myself and Abby, wonderful co-host, and we talk about all kinds of things. This one's going to be a little bit heavily on the partnership side of things. And we might talk about medical devices, and we might also talk about a particular team in town a little bit, right? And kind of give some boosters to that, to that quarterback that needs to get fixed up as soon as possible. Anyway, so we have a couple of sponsors we would like to make sure we get a mention of. RSP Architects, who have brought back this amazing building. The Grain Bell Brewery, which I refer to as the Castle to Beer. It is a wonderful space, as we can all enjoy. It's amazing when people show up for this. They're like, I've driven by this so many times and never been in. It's usually 50% of the crowd at least. Anyway, it's a wonderful space to be in, a wonderful thing to put on, and they're our host, allowing us to do this in this space. Of course, we're also officed here, Capsule, Special Projects Agency. We work with brands like Patagonia, Arc'teryx, Quick Trip, all over the country, and actually we have some international clients currently we're working on. All kinds of things related to brand and packaging, messaging, all kinds of wonderful intellectual stuff. We just actually presented names for an AI platform. You think like naming, like that's going to be taken over by AI, but it's really challenging to get to protectable names. So I think naming is going to have a revival because it's really hard, and we do it a lot. We also have Lake One as one of our sponsors, and Lake One is run by a gentleman by the name of Ryan Rudd, who you'll never see. He never shows up. He's the shyest partner we've got. We love Ryan Rudd. He's amazing. He actually has shown up once, and I gave him so much grief he never showed up again. He is a HubSpot implementation partner, an amazing team there at Lake One. And then we have August Ash. They are also a wonderful partner of ours, does a lot of work in website development. And they actually might be represented here. I think a few of them might be in the room. So we love August Ash. And then it's on to our two guests who we're going to have a wonderful conversation with about partnerships and the Vikings and Medtronic. So first, we're going to have you introduce each of yourselves, and then Abby's going to take over with some questions.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us here. We have been talking about spending more time telling our story together, so really appreciate it. And thank you all for showing up and for moving the date. It is true. I am headed to Dublin tomorrow. So a little bit about me. I'm Morgan Kennedy. I have been with the Vikings just a little bit over a year, so I'm headed into my second season. Before that, I spent 14 and a half years at Target, I started my career in finance, made my way into marketing, and really built a career around being an expert in partnership strategy and negotiations, and then did a short stint at Atomic Data, where I thought about the role of data as it relates to sports, and now at the Vikings. So that's a little bit about kind of my background and how I got to where I am.
That is cool. Morgan's cool. My name is Jane DeLeo. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Communications, Marketing, and Brand at Medtronic. And Morgan and I have gotten to know each other through our partnership in the last 3-4 months as we've finalized our next deal. I started my career in journalism, so a little bit of a different way to get here. But journalism led to communications, which led to marketing. And prior to being at Medtronic, I was at American Express out in New York for about 8.5 years. And then prior to that, did a startup, some nonprofit work, and started my career here actually at Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine. So it's great to be back in Minnesota and great to see all of you all. So thank you for being here and thank you for having us.
Now am I on? Okay, there we go. All right. All right, well, thank you guys for being here today. Thank you everyone for showing up. I'm Abby Kelsey. I am the CEO of Marketers Community and then founder of Always Social. And I'm really excited for this conversation. So now that we have a little bit of your background, let's dive into a little bit of the origin story of this partnership for maybe those in the room that aren't familiar, but just kind of how it came to be, kind of in that story.
Sure. So we've been with Minnesota Vikings for over a decade now. And for Medtronic, we went through a major acquisition about that time with a company in Ireland. So we merged with them. And I think there's a lot of questions in the community. What is Medtronic doing? Are they leaving? And the answer was no, we're not. So for us, it was how might we partner with areas of the community to let people know we're still here. We still love the community. We still love the sports and different vibrancy within the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities community. So the Vikings for us were a natural fit based on our mission and our values and the fandom that they bring. So that's a little bit of how we got together.
I love that. When you guys first started kind of having the conversations, do you remember a specific time that kind of sparked like, oh, this is going to be happening, or kind of what those conversations felt like or sounded like to really kind of get that started?
I mean, I think for us, it's always been we still believe in the fandom. We believe in the synergy in the audience, right? So when we take a step back and look at the objectives, why are we even going to do a partnership? What does that look like? For us, the objective for our business was always there, and the objective based on the nice overlap with your audience was there. So again, I think that sparked it. And then again, just there's such a passion for the Minnesota Vikings within our employee base, within this Twin Cities where we are. So I think it was just, again, that natural thing to continue to progress on.
Yeah, and what I would add is from the Viking side, we think a lot about we have a huge audience, millions of people kind of across the nation and world, but also here in the Twin Cities that are passionate about the work we do. We get a live audience kind of weekly through the season, people who are engaged, excited, but they really care a lot about the organizations that are here in town and how they support and give back. And a lot of brands, including Medtronic, leverage it to engage their staff base for volunteerism, to use it for hospitality, to bring assets to life. So when you start to put those things together, and as Jane said, align on values, you start to really unlock something special.
I love that. So when we're thinking, you talked about kind of aligning on those values and kind of key objectives, for this partnership, what does that look like laid out? Do you have specific examples of kind of how you bring that to life, or, what you're focused on?
Sure. So I'm looking at two folks on my team right now, Jeanette and Don, who were instrumental. You guys can wave at bringing this to life. And I think for us, there are two main objectives, which is one, how might we continue to raise awareness of Medtronic as a brand and what is it and what we do? Because I think people say, oh, it's the pacemaker company, but there's so much more, whether it's treating Parkinson's or overactive bladder or just helping people solve these major issues so they can alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. So again, that was one piece. And then the other piece too was, is there a way that we could actually talk about one of our products, our direct to consumer in a direct to consumer way that resonates? So it's a little bit of a test and learn, and a real opportunity for us to see what sticks through this experiential activation.
And exactly
Awesome.
that. Awesome. Okay, so then Morgan, for you, kind of interested a little bit, how did you get into, like, what was the attraction to partner marketing partnerships? Kind of what was that story for you, or what do you love so much about it?
Yeah, I actually got my first start in partnerships actually in investor relations. And so I was working at Target when Target had an activist investor really thinking about kind of our board and what they did there. And I was brought on as part of our financial leadership development program into kind of a rotational role there. And I realized how much I loved the work of being able to take what are the objectives of Target and what we need to accomplish, and then what are the investors trying to do, and what is that sweet spot in the middle to make sure that all ships could kind of rise in the middle. And so that was kind of the first role that I really loved. I got a lot of credit for storytelling and being able to put financial and complex information in one place, but also be able to interpret it and have the conversations. And that was a real unlock for me because didn't quite know where I fit before that. And so from there, I actually moved over into PR, which was doing the exact same thing related to finance, corporate governance, multi-channel, multicultural, but with media instead of with investors. And so those two things were kind of an unlock for me on what I got interested in, where I became passionate, and allowed me to be both analytical on the partnership side, thinking about contracts and numbers and data and measurement, and then creative and strategic on how do you think about the overlap of objectives and the needs that a partnership could have, and how do you deliver for that into the future. So that's kind of how I got my start in it, and really where I wanted to find that sweet spot.
I love that there seems to, like, when you mentioned negotiation as one of the things in your portfolio of skills, and you could hear that thread throughout all of that was negotiation. And you seem like you'd be a fierce negotiator in this partnership in a gentle, kind way, and back and forth, right? So how did that go down in the back and forth negotiation?
Well, the great thing is we didn't have to negotiate against each other. But what I would say is what I feel like feels really different about the Vikings, it is truly based on a relationship. There was a relationship for 10 years that allowed us to understand what was important to each of us, what we needed to do differently, and then have the rapport from our teams. We have them in the audience. My team just walked in. Hey,
AJ
Sal.
McCarthy's here? What?
Yeah.
What?
He looks like it. That allowed us to unlock the relationship, have hard conversations, transparent conversations, but really built on trust and making sure both of us were successful. So really sat in a different place. It wasn't a transactional negotiation along the way, but even today, as we think about how to bring the partnership and brand to life, it's really based on the relationships, the conversation, the transparency, and the trust that's built between both companies.
I love that too because it went even like kind of just meeting them for the first time and prepping for this and the relationship that you guys have built through this of like sometimes we think of partnerships and we might think more transactional or checklist or logo, put your logo here, I'll put my logo here and we'll, advertise to both of our audiences. But there's something special here with what you guys have. And so can you just share a little bit about like your relationship, that working together and what that experience has been like?
I mean, Morgan's now stuck with me for a long, long time. So we've become good friends. But honestly, I think it's transparency and vulnerability, right? I remember the day where we were like, hey, can we just get on a quick call? And I said, here's the deal. Here's what I actually have to accomplish internally and externally. I'm going to be really transparent with you. This is what my stakeholders on both sides need and want. How do we get there? And what do you need? And so she was able to explain that to me. I think it was just the ability to say, let's take a step back. There's no emotion here. Let's just get to the objectives and the business need. And then let's figure out how to solve it together. And what it allowed for was a lot of different creativity and a different like trust building through that. And I mean, we've had some of the funniest calls I've had in a while.
I once called Jane and I was like, okay, I have good news and I have some bad news. Which one do you want first? And I gave her the bad news and then I gave her the good news. And then she goes, okay, so what's the good news? I was like, that was the good news.
That is true.
Sorry. I was like,
like,
that
okay.
was the good news.
But it was that rapport that we built very quickly that I think helped us kind of navigate it. And again, find a sweet spot of what would work for both sides and what truly needed to be true for both sides. And I think the other piece too was realizing that as partners, and we are very different brands, we serve very different purposes. But, and I always like a pilot, test and learn, but how might we be a case study for one another? What do we each need internally where if we bring our best selves to this, that we can both help each other internally and externally. And so we brought that mindset to this. And again, we're just pushing the boundaries in different ways because we just have to, and we can.
Oh, the other thing that I was going to add that we've talked a lot about is how do you build relationships at the right levels? So who is connected? So we have an incredible team here who are connected weekly on bringing the brands to life together, negotiating the same kind of challenges that we are. And then we come in at a different level to help remove roadblocks or support the team in a given way. But it's really helpful to have the different levels of partnership at different kind of altitudes to make sure that you can accomplish what you need.
Yeah, it fits together in the fact that there's a lot of, fans of the Vikings that have had heart attacks at certain points in the season, right? We're like, I'm glad Medtronic is here because this hurts a lot. And not that we're gonna have a good
We have a
season.
solution.
It is. You are a solution right in that moment. Yeah. I love that the Minnesota connection and the fact that, there's been some history of Medtronic potentially being pulled out of our state, right? And I think, the state would actually probably give up if the Vikings left. It'd be done. It'd be like, we're not even a state anymore if we don't have the Vikings, right? Because that's not even come up as a conversation, I don't think, ever. But that kind of that rootedness in the Minnesota values and coming together, it just seems to fit, is what I'm saying, which is really fascinating,
We talk a lot about values together on what we're each trying to accomplish. How do we align to the highest one so that even when things get hard, we know what we're kind of grounded in. I also think the Vikings have a tremendous opportunity to leverage the wide variety of companies that are here in Minnesota to bring the best to life for our fans. And I think like no other kind of sports team in the NFL can they do that because of the tremendous amount of support, values alignment, integration that we have here in the Twin Cities.
So when you talked about values, obviously there's values as businesses, right? And then we have values as people and as teams. What do you do to align that? And then also make sure that you are driving value for the business. Like when you have those conversations, because I think sometimes we think partnership marketing or partner marketing, and we think, again, kind of just that logo exchange. So like, what is that actual value piece that you guys talk about that you're trying to achieve, and that, maybe even you communicate then to, the executives that you work with and, cross-functionally?
Yeah, so again, I think it starts with those organizational values. One of the things I love about Medtronic is how mission driven it is. One of the things I love about the Vikings is how mission driven it is. So you start there, but then you really look at your business objective and then look at you talk a lot about this. What is our role in your objective? And getting really, really clear about that, because the Vikings, as much as I would love you to solve all my business objectives, you might not, but you're a part of this marketing suite, which is amazing. And so that really articulating with your partner, what is the role I need this sponsorship or this activation to play? And then how are we going to measure that? And I think being able to articulate that extremely clearly, both internally and to your partner, are clear and really necessary for that success.
And then in addition to it, it's spending time together to get to that. I think as a relationship driven business, it's that way for a reason. And it is to drive those biggest outcomes, to have the hard conversations, to figure out how to do something really different in measurement and activation that kind of hasn't been done before.
Absolutely. Do you guys have any examples that you're comfortable sharing that, like those challenges that maybe you overcome? You talked about the one situation that said, here's the good and the bad, and that was the good. But do you have any other examples of kind of that, just having to be open and transparent with each other that then maybe led to, a different outcome?
One of the things I was thinking about the other day is, let's start with measurement, right? So there are certain things that we want to measure on the brand side and the marketing side with where I sit, and there's certain things the business needs to measure, which is the product we're activating against. And it wasn't so much an issue, it's just more I came to Morgan, and actually our team said we all got together in a conference room with our measurement folks and with the sales team and the activation teams, the marketing teams. And we're like, what do we do? And just being able to start to solve that problem together, because that was outside of my wheelhouse in terms of how we're going to bring this product to life. And the Vikings were able to provide us, okay, if you do this and then you do this, this is how we know how to solve it based on our fans. And so it wasn't necessarily a friction point, but it was in terms of us getting to a joint solution together to bring the best to life and see how we can drive impact for the business. The other thing too is we started at, this is all about brand awareness. And then we were like, just kidding, it's going to be about product awareness too. And I think Morgan's like, your job's really hard. I was like, it is different. It's a B2B, we're in a B2B space. And how do you bring that to life for consumers? That's hard, especially when people don't necessarily get to choose all the products or devices or therapies you maybe get. That is a medical professional's typically decision or a conversation. And so it really was trying to figure out, like, how do we crack this nut? What does this look like? And the Vikings really came forward and said, okay, this is a little different for us too. But through this conversation and brainstorm, if we get to the crux of what you're trying to do, we can bring some great ideas to the table as well. So that was pretty amazing.
And I think that's one of the most fun parts about my job. We get to work with business to business brands, business to consumer brands, brands that want to just do hospitality, brands that want to touch fans. And so we can bring best practices, things that we've learned from a variety of industries, types of activations to the table to help solve problems that you might not normally think of that would connect the dots really differently.
And I appreciate the fact that I've got 1,000 heart attack jokes in my head that I can't that I know I can't say. But you've kept it serious. You know what I mean? You're in a serious business. This is a serious brand, doing serious things, and you're not really a consumer brand, but you hear people say, no, I've got a Medtronic pacemaker. And like, why do you care about the brand of your pacemaker? Well, it's a quality pacemaker.
That's right. People, you want to trust what you have. I mean, that's the thing with medical care, right? You need to trust that you're getting the best. And for us, it's about building that awareness and trust. And so that people start to resonate. Because for us, we don't want people to learn about Medtronic in their time of need, full stop. You don't want that to happen. You want someone in their time of need, or if it's their caretaker, to already know you and trust you as a brand. And maybe it's not the right product, maybe it's not the right brand, but if that conversation happens, you want to have already gotten over those hurdles. And that's a big hurdle to overcome, and it's a very sensitive and important and emotional time. And so how do you get in front of that in an authentic way for the product, the brand, with the right audience?
If you are in marketing, I want you to raise your hand. Okay, so marketers. Marketers, yep. Can you take us inside that boardroom or Zoom call, whatever it is, when you're talking about if things are working? So we talked about measurement and brand awareness. And I think as marketers, we're like, yes, tell us your secrets. How do you measure that? Because we all have our own ideas, but then you go to a different company and they're like, that's not how we measure it here. So can you give us some insights to like what that looks like for Medtronic and, the Vikings too? Because again, different roles, right, in the organization. So what metrics matter to you guys for both of your roles?
Well, first, of course, start with the objective, right? And so what are you trying to measure? It was fun. We had both of our measurement teams to come together. That was like fascinating. Like as marketers, more creatives, to watch that interaction was great. And they do measure things differently or think about metrics in a different way. So for us, of course, it's really about that brand awareness, that brand lift within a survey environment. But then we're also trying to see, can we actually get people to take a call to action? Like how direct and how close to the target can we get these people to the business to help them? And so that's another thing too, is like whether it's a custom URL, whatever it might be, how do you get people to actually take that? So those are just a few of the pieces, but I know you guys have a great suite of measurement as well.
We do. We have a suite, but I think what it comes down to is clear objectives. And I think one of the things so often is getting to the very specific objectives, not of the marketing plan, of the Vikings role in the marketing plan. And then can we deliver the thing that you need us to do? And being clear about that up front. There's nothing worse than I've been on the brand side of these conversations too, where you get your report at the end of the year and you've not hit any of the metrics that you feel like you need to go talk about. It's because we weren't clear enough at the beginning or specific enough about what we need. Which allows us to sit in rooms together and get really finite on, okay, if it is about getting people into a funnel to be able to convert them in a certain way, okay, where can we do that and how can we do that? It's not, let's get you another sign.
And that is something that I think is critical and that you and your team have been able to bring. Because there are things we had ideas about and they're like, it might not work, or I don't know if I can deliver that for you. And that's a real honest conversation that as a partner I value. I may want that to end deliverable, but then what needs to be true to my always question is what needs to be true to get to that deliverable, or how do I need to change my thinking and my internal storytelling to actually do something and what is impactful? So I think again, it's being able to access this brain trust of the Vikings to figure that out. And I think for us to be able to take a step back and understand from their perspective what works and what might not.
When we first talked about this potentially happening and your very angry voice for a moment, which is something else that was bothering her. And this was the salve for that to get her on the stage. And it worked out for us as well, which is great. But the reason this was intriguing to me was this is not a typical partnership. You don't look around and see medical devices partnering with sports teams, right? It just is not that common because of that, it's complex. It's hard to do. And I think this partnership versus other partnerships you see out there almost easier. Do you see that the hardness of this, the challenge of this has made it better as an interesting partnership for you?
For me, it 100% is. The more we can find, like one of the things I kind of stole from my Target days is how are we first, best, or only? And so for me, in being able to deliver for our partners, what is that and how do we get there? The harder the challenge, the more impactful I think it becomes at the end. The transactional ones are very easy to you rotate them in turnkey, but to actually sit, solve a problem that can't be solved, bring it to life for fans in a unique way, and then deliver the impact and results that you want at the end, that's really motivating for me.
Yeah, and then curious for you, now that this has been good in a lot of ways, I'm thinking about like other teams. No NFC teams, just to be clear, right? No Vikings or Packers.
Please, not NFC
I mean, no
North.
Bears or Packers at all. Outside of any other teams. Have you thought about that? Had conversations about that at all?
No, it's actually interesting you bring it up. So we were presenting this to our CEO, who's diehard Vikings fan. Jeff is, the biggest Vikings fan. But one of the things he loved about it, he goes, this needs to be a pilot for us. And from a marketing perspective, that is music to our ears, right? Because we don't always, sponsorship dollars these days are sometimes harder to come by. But how might we prove this as part of the marketing suite in general and to showcase, like when you're going into a market, if you leverage a property like the Vikings to seed for a new product, could this be a lift before your actual direct to consumer, digital marketing comes in? And so for us, like looking at that as a pilot, we're definitely considering it, but it took a partner like Morgan and the Vikings to sit there and think through how could we measure that? How does that come to life? So that we could internally potentially create this as to something larger. And again, not all marketers have sponsorship backgrounds. So again, it is an education, especially at a B2B company, right? So for us, it's an opportunity to say, when you are launching a product, if these things are true, you might want to consider a sponsorship based on your audience, based on the right market, et cetera. Let us show you what works and our learnings.
Yeah, for me, it'd be Notre Dame. Like, just skip professional. Let's go to Notre Dame. That's the next one. That's a little bit of bias in me. Anyway. Next question.
Yeah, I kind of want to go off of that because so when you're looking at like the partnership and you're starting to figure out what this is going to look like, your objectives, we kind of miss the part in the middle of like, how do we determine how we're going to get there? Like, do you build the entire plan and, go all in? Or is it, hey, let's try a little bit here, see how it hits the market, and then expand to different channels or strategies and tactics? Like, how does that work?
It's such an interesting question. One of the things that's unique about the Vikings compared to kind of other NFL teams is our sales side of our organization and partnership activation or marketing sit under two different leaders. A lot of times they sit under like one like CRO, and here we do them separately so that we can really create the tension between what's advantageous for us to sell as an asset and available, and then what do we need to do to drive our own brand and a partner's brand. And so I think that is a really interesting way in which we first start to come at it, is really thinking about the objectives of kind of what we need to accomplish and how we kind of separate those. So one of the things that kind of where it starts is early conversations on kind of general thinking, but it goes through the sales team. So sometimes we get handed a set of assets that may have made sense. Let's pretend it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago based on the objective, and now the objectives have changed. And so how do we need to think about those differently? How do we need to think about what would be helpful based on the objectives? Because it won't perform in the same way. And so on the marketing side, we get to think about that more often and have deeper conversations related to it. But I'd say that's one thing that sits really differently between the two, is we're constantly having the tension of like what's already in the contract and the deal and what do we need to accomplish.
Absolutely. So talking about kind of the two different industries, is there any like one thing that you have both learned from each other or even from each other's industries that like would be your standout, like this is absolutely something I need to share, industry related or from each other?
Well, I think one of the greatest things is I still call Morgan on the regular. I'm like, I have a leadership question for you. How are you thinking about this? And so I think it's just more of that camaraderie and thought partnership, even on the leadership side of having gone through this together now. Like, how do you think about this? How should I be thinking about this? What does that look like? So for me, it's just, I would say your poise, your ability to think about things very strategically, and also to challenge me to think about what is our role. Because I am so business focused in what the business needs to deliver. I need to remember that there is a specific role and to really carve that out so I can be a better partner and that this partnership can be even more impactful.
I mean, as Jane just mentioned, I learn from her every day. I think we do more car conversations than anything, but really once you start to develop the rapport, you have a lot of respect for the people you get to work with, how they've thought about things, how they've seen things different. It's kind of like a mastermind group, right? Where she's bringing experiences that I haven't had that I think are like incredible and amazing and different. And like I've told her before, your job is hard. How do you bring that to the table to give new ways to think about the world or connect dots differently? And so I just really value the constant conversation on leadership and on industry background or experiences that Jane has had, and we use that a lot together.
This is somewhat of a tangent, but it's very much related, of course. You had the New York Stock Exchange in, right? Does anyone else see that they had the exchange was basically opened up on the floor of Medtronic a month ago or something like that? That was absolutely amazing. And I just realized about 5 minutes ago that the partnership was active right in the middle of that. Because there was a character on the stage, a Vikings character on the stage for the stock exchange opening. Yeah. He was on the stage cheering it on, and we were doing Skol around I'm like, this is
You would be so surprised at how many places the Skol chant gets done. Like it was at the Waste Management Golf tournament. You'll be in a bar and people love a Skol chant. So that doesn't actually totally surprise me.
Yeah, it could show up. That's awesome. And the fact that the Vikings, fan base goes to London and goes to Ireland and has that kind of reach is absolutely amazing. We were talking about that before we got up here, and the plans for that and doing that. Could you just talk a little bit more about that for the Vikings fans that want to know? Right.
Vikings fans are the best fans. I can say that. I can say that for a couple of reasons. One, so I grew up in Colorado and I grew up a Broncos fan and diehard fans there as well. I was also a Broncos cheerleader in college. So it was really fun. It was amazing. But now back on this side with the Vikings, I can say that the Vikings fans truly are the best fans. Not only kind of the loyalty, the belief, the values of belief in this team consistently is just really impactful. The team, the fans travel really well. We go to warm locations. We'll go overseas. Who the Vikings are such a core part of this community's identity, both individually and as a community, that the part that I love most about my job is the fans. So we have a ton of football art. I also manage the art collection for the Vikings. And we have a ton of football art. And in my office, I actually have a picture of our fans. It's a painted version of our fans because I always want to remember, even as we do business with partners, the end goal is the fan. The fans need to have an incredible experience and believe in the team. And so while we are solving objectives and get to spend a lot of time together, at the end of the day, it's about the experience we create for the fan and the belief in the team and the brand.
I think you might just created a new role for yourself. I don't know. Can you go around and just influence people to become Vikings fans? I think that's what you just did there. Everyone's like, yeah. People who don't even watch football are like, absolutely, let's do it.
The team does it all on their own. It's naturally there.
And it's far beyond their win record. Let's be honest, right? I mean, it's if you try to measure the value of brands and look at it for teams, they're far beyond. I also love the fact that, Vikings has once raided villages across all of Europe, now are coming and raiding London and raiding Dublin. Yes.
So I'm so excited to go to Dublin. So it's an away game for us, both this game and the next weekend against the Browns. And I'm excited for them to be away games, and because otherwise we would have had to play the Steelers and the Browns in their home stadiums, which this will be better for us. It might show up more like a home game. So excited about that. And I have also heard that in Dublin, almost everywhere you go, there are Vikings bars, there are Vikings tours. And so Vikings is inherently built into the culture there. So I'm hoping that that's good luck for us.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. I got off path. I was supposed to go back to you as far as employee motivation, employee engagement.
Do you
that's
do
where I
the
was
same
going
thing?
with the Victor. I was going with the Victor thing. Sorry. Hard right turn. I would pivot. No, I was going there before, and then I lost track of because the Vikings got in the way. Anyway, fandom. Sorry, that just happens. So you were part of the partnership is employee engagement. Tell me more about that and what that's done.
Sure. So I think, for us, it's really thinking about one of the assets we have is a community event or So we try to engage our employees in different ways through, we have what's called Project Six. And so people can volunteer for different things throughout the year with Medtronic. And so we try to engage our employees in different avenues and through these community events is one of the opportunities. And again, just, our employees like to see how this is being brought to life. And we also have a lot of employees who are Vikings fans who attend games on their own. So being able to see the brand come to life, I know is really impactful from what we hear. And even down to, the Medtronic Game Changer segment that we now have at each game, it's really, how do we continue to bring the brand to life for everybody? And that, includes employees.
Yeah, inspiring people to invent and create. And that's very cool. You have another question, Abby?
Yeah, so I'm wondering, when you look at the kind of partnership as a whole and everything that you've learned throughout, for those in the room that maybe work for organizations that are kind of thinking about partnership, partner marketing or getting involved, or maybe want to start looking into that, like what would your advice be from, what you've learned? And it could be big or small brands, like it doesn't just kind of, they know that there's value and maybe they don't know how to take that to their CEO.
I mean, I'm going to be repetitive here. I think it's being really clear on your objectives. Like, what do you need to accomplish, and can we help you get there? I think it's really that fine role of what role can we play in helping you drive your results? And so when I think about that, it gets really exciting because we have a brand that has tremendous equity and community connections. We have fans, we have eyeballs and engagement and people who are going to a live event. So we get to do events and experiences. So we have a huge a variety of kind of marketing assets that we can bring to life, but those don't mean anything if the brand is not clear on what they are trying to accomplish and how they want to get there.
I think the brand side's similar. And I would say the other piece too is if you're going to go sell this into your C-suite, you have to know your audience and your insight. Like, I think we all have we kind of know who the audience is, but do we really understand what they're feeling and what they need and where we can best show up? And I think having that data and being data driven in that, and then finding the right match of the partner that will then help you achieve that objective is critical. I think that's been a key learning for us throughout this is just those fans, just there's something that makes them tick. And there's something so important with that audience that overlaps in a nice way.
I would add one more. I think having a champion in your organization that can really drive it forward, because it's a different type of marketing asset. And it's a long-term contract and it activates differently and funny. And sometimes the people who brought it to life aren't the ones who are there later, but it's really important to have somebody who believes in it and champions it in a lot of different rooms. So I'd say having a champion as well is a really important one.
I would imagine your net promoter score inside of Medtronic went off the charts when this started, right? It was like, oh, what? Games? Sweet? All that wonderful stuff. Anyway, that's probably a wonderful thing. So what about collaborations and partnerships have had some controversial bumps in the recent years, right? And do you have plans in place if things go, or do you talk about that in your plans, like what could go wrong, disaster planning kinds of things? Not that we have to name the things that have gone bad or talk about anything that's gone south here at all.
I mean, that's just a reality for any brand is that there are going to be things that come up. That is the world we live in. News, information travels fast. So in communications, in PR, anyone who's a PR practitioner knows you have to be ready for anything. But that is why I think in addition to your business objective, being values aligned and having the right relationships is critical. Because again, if it's just transactional, anything can happen. But when you have this partnership, and I can honestly say, I know this is how the Vikings operate with integrity, and I can get behind that, that is very different than I'm just going to go put my name over here for something else. So I think those are really critical.
No, I was just going to agree. Values aligned, mission driven, because I mean, that's why as any organization, you have them. So when things get hard, you know what your North Stars are to kind of guide to. And so I think being really clear on those and where they align at the beginning. And then to Jane's point, there's always risk. I mean, we operate with fans in a crazy world with
attacks. Practically.
We have players, right? Like at any point in time, the conversation, and it's live sport. And so there's always risk inherent in doing the plan, but ways in which we can easily mitigate that through being really aligned and being really clear on why we're together.
I love that. Just the complicated nature of this partnership, it does make a case study in itself. And I hope you can find a place to publish that in some form of what this looks like, because it would be, because it is, not that partnerships are easy, but I think once they've been done, they've been done, and there's structure and there's form. But then you do one like this, and it's much more complex. It
And
requires you to think harder.
I'm gonna say you guys should do like your own case study just on like the personal development and like relationship that you have built, right? Like the energy and like when you meet, you're like, oh, wait, this was the partnership. Are you guys friends? How long have you known each other? Like since you were kids?
I
That's
mean,
how it
we're
feels.
like deep friends now, but like we met like 3 months ago. But it makes you close really fast. And our teams, I'm looking at Skelly and Jeanette and Don, they could probably say the same thing. When you spend that amount of time trying to solve problems together and make each other successful, I think it goes a long way. I mean, and kudos to them. This partnership comes to life because of this team. And we just get to get up here and get to talk about how great their work is.
Brag about them. Yeah,
It's their work.
It's them. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have loved to seen that meeting between marketing in Medtronic and marketing at the Vikings and what that been like, right? This is going to be interesting. How are these two going to mingle?
It's fun. And, just doing things differently, like challenging each other in different ways. So for example, we asked Skelly, we were like, could we come to an editorial meeting? Because we want to pitch some ideas to your team. We know it's like a traditional news team. We're going to bring our news team too, and let's just talk shop. And, that's fun and that's interesting. And then you're getting like minds in the room. And that's not something that we never normally do or ask for, but they were open to the conversation, and it just opened up this new conversation again, an opportunity for all of us, because all of a sudden we were talking about patient stories and what might interest fans. And again, going back to my journalism days, it was just fun and cool and different. And that was another thing that we were able to open up together.
Amplifying the creativity. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, we're at the time in which we turn it over to the audience for any questions from you for these two guests, and they can be football related. I don't know if you want to ask the specific injuries of JJ McCarthy, but
you probably have more information on football injuries than I do. I get it at the exact same time the news comes out. So if you're on your phone and have gotten news, before me.
Right.
How's a high ankle sprain?
Questions.
24 minutes ago. Vikings Steelers and Groove.
Oh, look at that. It's right there. Perfect.
Haven't read it yet.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully there's not any bad news. Anyway.
Oh, and did you see Isaiah Rodgers got NFC Defensive Player of the Week? I don't know if anybody saw that after an amazing game.
Yes. Yeah, they crushed. Oh, go ahead.
How does the team leverage US Bank Stadium's unique features to enhance partner activation?
First of all, I don't know if you know, but we were rated #1 voice of the fan in the NFL last year for US Bank Stadium. And so every week we measure against everything from how you come into the stadium to our guest experience staff to parking to mobile ticketing. So we look at a lot of metrics every week. And I think continually fine tuning those pieces are really amazing. But we have a stadium that is, top of the league. We have an incredible Medtronic Plaza that gets to, wow, look, you see how that brought that in? That gets to allow fans to engage in the brand early, come early, enjoy it, be a part of it, and come in. We have an art collection in there. We have clubs and spaces, and so people can engage in the space differently. You can come as a fan. You can come for a business purpose. So I think there's just so many elements that can get brought to life in kind of one day, which is why I think game days are so special. They are really elevated, and the teams do an incredible job.
Awesome. Other questions? Oh.
I have kind of two questions, but you might have the same answer to both. I don't know. Can you share an example of one of the real problems that you've solved together? And do you have an example of one of the most successful partner campaigns that you've done together?
We have a really sharp audience, just so you know.
I'm good. I know.
Really smart.
Well, and I think she said between us, but one of the things I'm most looking forward to, so I don't know, I've only been here a year, so being able to speak to kind of where it's been done in the past. But what I am really excited about is what we're doing this year, because as Medtronic starts to bring kind of one of their brand to life for the consumer rather than on the business side, how do we use our assets to introduce consumer-led products to a wide live audience continually? And how do we need to adjust and think about our assets with the team back on the measurement side, really thinking about how do we trial something and then quickly figure out what do we need to pivot so that we're not getting a report at the end of the season that we need to impact next year, but like what can we do next weekend or in 2 weeks when we're back, even if there's small tweaks, but how do we get that information quickly to bring that to life? And so I think what the Medtronic team is doing in this space to really think about this as how do you become consumer led and continue to drive your brand, I think is going to be really interesting on how we pull those together in the end.
And I would actually say, I don't think it was necessarily a problem. I think it was more, I thought I wanted something like in terms of the assets, right? You get an asset list. We thought we were like, we need this one. And they're like, unfortunately, it's not available, but what we can give you is this one. And I actually think it's gonna be better for you. And I'm like, I don't know, Morgan. And then I went and saw it and I was like, she is so right. And it was just, so it wasn't even a problem, but it was just more, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so we're allowing my partner to, and trusting my partner enough to trust, to guide me on that. So I'm just thinking of like how the video board comes up and we have 2 wings now. When the Medtronic Game Changers comes on, I'm looking at docs, it's like, it looks so cool. And it's amazing. And I didn't even think that that would come to life. And you're like, no, I think it's better for you. And I trusted you. And it really came to life and worked out well. So
I love that. I mean, you have a very adaptable environment within sports marketing. You have to be always, because you're on the stage all the time. It is every week. And to have inserting some of that agility inside of Medtronic has got to be an interesting learning for you, like getting data adjusted and coming back and making adjustments quickly.
yeah, absolutely. And we've already been doing that. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I didn't appreciate was preseason games. And I was like, no, we just want to be live. And they're like, well, just work with us and we'll work some kinks out. And gosh, they're right. And we've already been able to pivot and do some different things because we saw how they came to life. And you don't know until you are in that stadium and that stadium is packed and it's game day and it's action and all the things are going on. And it's hard to plan perfectly or envision this perfectly until you're there. And so I think being able to, I'm just looking at Don, Jeanette, and Skelly, like we have pivoted on the fly. We've seen things that worked or maybe didn't work, and we've been able to adjust week over week. And I think that flexibility with the team too, and the marketing team especially, has been instrumental in this.
Yeah, there's an old study that was done. It's not that old. It's maybe only 6 or 7 years old. Of Coca-Cola studied, asked how many people knew who the primary sponsor was of the Coca-Cola Stadium in Atlanta. And there was a very small percentage of people knew or listed Coca-Cola as the sponsor. Now, and it was attributed to like, it became wallpaper, right? It was just everywhere and you couldn't really have a good engagement with. It sounds like you've broken that.
Well, and I think that's one of the things we talked about too, is like, what is the fans' journey into the stadium? What are they experiencing of the brand outside? And then they come in, they go through Medtronic Plaza, then they might see something later. And so what things become amplification? What things are people not seeing because it's a specific time, or we need to think about a different placement for it, but really thinking about it so it doesn't become wallpaper. And those things become really easy to do. You can just throw something up, but if you're not really intentional, it can't just be one thing. You've got to really think about how somebody is experiencing your whole brand through the whole period of time.
I love that, the full journey. Anyway, we've got a question from the audience.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know an example of top 3 objectives you started a year with and how that changed throughout a year. Doesn't have to be all 3 that you would divulge, but
Well, one, I like to keep it simple. So I normally we normally don't say more than one objective, although this year I feel like we had 2. And they actually haven't changed, which has been great. Because I think that's also really important, is if you keep changing your objectives, you're going to have an issue because no one's going to win. So for us, it really was about how might we raise brand awareness and what, not just about Medtronic, but what we do. And then how do we, again, start to think about seeding a direct consumer product from a B2B company in a new way. And this is new for us. So we've stayed the course, which I think has been great. I think we expand a little bit more than where we thought we would start from. But again, I think that it has, that friction point has allowed for the creativity to come through.
Love it. Do we have any other questions?
Other
from the
questions from
audience?
the audience.
I'll go here. Then I'll go
I'm just kind of curious whether with each other or otherwise, your most unique or out of the box activation. I know Vikings, you guys do some cool stuff. So kind of curious, what's the coolest, wildest, out of the box thing you guys have done in your career or otherwise?
Well, I used to work I used to work for a company called Tough Mudder. So I was employee 13. And so I remember when they're like, hey, you're in PR and we need you to go test the 10,000-volt wire that's going to shock people to make sure it actually shocks participants when it goes through, because otherwise it's a bad experience for the media. So working at Tough Mudder and being on random fields throughout the United States and the world and testing those was probably for me one of the that was a real learning experience.
I could have been talking about that this entire time. I can't
For
believe
her
that just
Amex
came out
days?
now. That is funny.
I'm actually going to go back to draft this year where we did live tattoos of our opponents on people. And all of that activation was sponsored by Ticketmaster. We did kind of sleeves after that to give away at training camp, and then had a day open after we did that where people could come in and get free tattoos. And so going from a brand like Target that is about joy and family to a brand that's like, we're just gonna tattoo these people and they're gonna sign up, is like a wild pivot. It is commitment.
Yeah,
It
this
is
is it.
commitment. And
I'm a
people
fan.
did it, and and it was awesome. And the content was great. And you see really why. I talk a lot about, people ask me like, what's your favorite part of working at the Vikings? And truly it is the responsibility that the Vikings are so deeply ingrained in people's identity. Like the responsibility to bring it to life, to make sure people love the brand and get to experience it, is truly incredible.
There's probably a number of people that said, no, I already got a tattoo. I got it. I got it done. But
Actually, they were like, so at draft party, we asked somebody like, would you ever bleed for the Vikings? And he's like, yeah, I already did. Yeah. And they pulled it up and it had a big old tattoo. So it exists.
that is
We got
so awesome.
one more back here.
Thanks. You mentioned leadership kind of off the cuff a little bit. And when I think of leadership, I think it can be potentially a lonely place. So I'm wondering if you could just speculate or pontificate a little bit on partnership as a form of leadership, what it means to go out on a limb and say, like, we're partners. We're not just working together. Like, partners means something else. So partnership is a form of leadership.
I did warn you that it is really
Oh, I
smart
love this.
audience.
This
I
is
know
really
it's
good.
really tough.
No, and I guess leadership can be a lonely place, but I guess I don't feel like it is, because I feel like my team is my team, and that if I don't talk to Jeanette or Don on a daily basis, I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, sure, there are decisions or sometimes situations where it does feel lonely, but that's where I feel like the thought partner and the partnership, even just as a human being and becoming that other thought partner as another leader, is really helpful. And I think that's why events like this, just networking with other people, getting other ideas. What are you guys up to? How are you thinking about this? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in your life. It's so much part of that journey. So that's what I would say.
Maybe you should open a tattoo shop within the stadium.
Yes.
That's a
Business
bold idea.
adjacency. Yes, I love
Everybody comes out
this.
branded. Just
Medtronic
Okay, we have
tattoo. Hmm?
How have you both been able to take the Vikings Medtronic and Medtronic Vikings relationship to branch out into other relationships? Use the symbiotic nature of what you're doing together to expand.
One of the things that is important for me, so I didn't say what I do at the beginning, which is really funny. I just said I worked for the Vikings. But I lead on the marketing side. I lead all of our corporate partners and all of our premium partnerships, in addition to some other work, including events and merchandising and fun things like the art collection. But on that partner side, one of the things that makes the work that we do so incredible is finding ways for the businesses to do business together. and finding ways for the leaders to know each other. And so we do travel together, we do meals together, and it's not just about networking. It truly is about how do you facilitate business, new ideas, make good connections. Because to the last point on leadership being lonely, sometimes you need people that can understand the challenges that you're facing. And here, when we're all centered around kind of the Vikings, everybody has like the best interest of everyone together. And so I would say that it's a hugely important part kind of how that kind of comes to life. And we've done it where we've tried to bring brands together. One that I'll just name because Skelly leads it on my team is we did had a partnership with General Mills and Hy-Vee together. And so it's like, how do those things come together? Where are the natural synergies where we can bring two brands together to produce something great for the fan and the end consumer?
That's cool. You're a broker of really cool partnerships and relationships. That's nice. Question?
Yep, I have one more question.
You're out? Okay. We are at the end of our time.
Oh, wait, one more question. What are you both most looking forward to? Like, what is that next thing? It could be in your role for your company as the partnership. What is that one thing you're looking forward to most?
A Super Bowl win.
Game
Let's
on.
go.
Awesome. Easy answer.
I'm going to go a little closer to timeline right here. I leave tomorrow for Dublin, and to just get to watch the brand come to life in like new spaces and places and see how people get excited about it, get introduced to it for the first time, right? We have a long history and tradition here, but people are just going to get experience to the Vikings for the first time. And there's very few opportunities to see a first. So I just love going to the international games and then seeing how that comes to life. So that's what I'm excited about next.
I love it.
Vikings Guinness. I mean, really. Talk about a marketing partnership. Anyway, this has been awesome. Thank you both for doing this, for
Thank
spending
you
the
all.
time. Thank you for prompting this and making sure we do this and introducing me to you. This has been absolutely amazing. Wonderful. Wonderful to have you. Wonderful inspirational conversations. And thank you for showing up and hanging out and listening and enjoying this. We do this once a month here at Capsule, and I would tell you my next one, but it just blew up yesterday on us. So now I've the travel schedule as well, so it's not just you, it does happen. And so we're still working that out, and we'll have that announcement coming soon. But we do these typically once a month, and we'll have 3 great ones coming up for sure, because the lineups are amazing for this. So thank you all for coming, hanging out, and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.